Good evening, members. Good evening, members. I'm Councillor Stuart Jeffrey, Leader of the Council. I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of the Cabinet. May I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the Council, but if anyone else is intending to record these proceedings, can you please let me know now? I ask this question not to stop you, but to merely ensure that members of the public in the room, all of them, know that this is taking place. Item 1. There are no apologies. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. Yep. Item 2, urgent items. There are 2 this evening. A summary of the feedback from Overview and Scrutiny Committee and Policy Advisory Committees and updated Appendix 1 Housing Asset Management Strategy. Are we agreed to take those? Lovely. Item 3, are there any visiting members? There aren't. Item, not online either, no. Item 4, disclosures. Are there any disclosures by members or officers? No. Okay, there are no disclosures. Item 5, are there any disclosures of lobbying? No. Item 6, I move that all items be taken in public. Is that agreed? Item 7, I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of February 26 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Item 8, there are no petitions. Item 9, there are no questions from local residents. Item 10, there are no questions from members. Item 11, there are no matters referred to the Cabinet by another committee for reconsideration. Item 12, there are no issues arising from overview and scrutiny. Item 13, there are no matters referred to the Cabinet by another committee. Item 14, there are no matters relating to a serious service failure or nuisance. And item 15, there are no receipts of written representations from members of the Council. Item 16, Cabinet Forward Plan. Do members have any comments on the Forward Plan? I'm keen, as has been raised in a couple of the packs and discussions amongst ourselves, that we are still working on making sure that we have a plan for the Forward Plan over the coming, particularly 6 months, given that we know that the Section 24 notice will be coming. And I have spoken to our Director of Governance about that, who's nodding. So are we agreed to note the Forward Plan? Lovely. Item 17, third quarter budget update. Councillor Summersgill, over to you.
Thank you. Oh, that's working. This report sets out the 2025-26 financial performance position as at 31st December 2025, in other words, 3/4 of the way through the financial year. The overview enables the committee to consider and comment on issues raised and actions being taken to address budget pressures. On revenue, for the Council as a whole, we have a favourable variance of £654,000 projected compared to the variance that I announced at 6 months of £197,000. So we're moving in the right direction. The 2 biggest contributors towards the improvement are an increase in the favourable variance for investment income and planning policy, with less work being required in-house than originally assumed. And the biggest overspend to offset these favourable variances relates to Loch Meadow, where expenditure has been incurred on dilapidations of the health club, which is hoped that some or all of these can be recouped from the former tenant, but that may take some time, probably next year or the year after. On capital, some capital expenditure is projected to slip into the next financial year. 1.4 million for corporate property acquisitions has not been spent, owing to no suitable opportunities arising yet. And there's also been slippage on purchase of temporary accommodation, with some transactions likely now to fall in the next financial year. Quality Homes for Life remains within budget for the lifetime of the programme, but is overspent this year, mainly because of an earlier than expected payment of £500,000 to the National House Building Warranty Scheme for the station, the post office, Maidstone East as we call it. The report also deals with debt collection and treasury management. Debt collection is slightly behind target for council tax, but ahead of target for business rates. And the treasury management position remains comfortable with cash balances of £45 million as at the end of December. There's a number of irrecoverable business rate debts which are recommended for write-off, some of some substantial age. So members are asked to note the position and also to recommend those write-offs.
Thank you, Councillor Summerskill. Mr Green, is there anything you wanted to add to that? Okay, members, Councillor Thompson.
Very briefly, Chair, to repeat things that have been said before in the pack, we're very grateful to officers. We can see the information in the papers, but I want to acknowledge that we know that the way that our museum, our leisure facilities, the business park and related economic service areas are not just business as usual. They reflect the close attention of all of our officer team to making sure that business as usual and unexpected surprises are all being managed, and I'm hugely impressed with the way that they're doing that. I'm very grateful for it and would like to acknowledge it here. Thank you.
Thank you. So can't see no one else indicating. We've got three recommendations proposed by Councillor Summerskill. I'm happy to second those from the chair. First two are for noting, and the third one is to agree the write-offs. Are they agreed? Lovely. Item 18 is the bulky waste service changes. Councillor English.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. There are two separate proposals set out in the report, which has gone through the relevant pack and was greeted with reasonable levels of enthusiasm. The first relates to the changes in the handling of persistent organic pollutants. The changes that the government has brought in handling these will cause the council to have some degree of increased cost. Therefore, we are simply not seeking to make a profit, but we are seeking to ensure that the damage to the council's finances is limited. The second change is in relation to what we hope will lead to a service improvement, which is relating to booking the bulky refuse collection slots. At the moment, we have a small number of persistent people who are booking slots, lots of slots, and then cancelling them, which poses all sorts of problems. The main one being that other people who could have booked those slots are unable to do so. And when people cancel at late notice, it can cause other disruptions to service. So what we're proposing is that there be an element of the charge that would be a non-refundable deposit. If people go through and use the service which has been booked, there'd be no additional cost to them. But should they choose to not use it, then there is a small £5 non-refundable deposit. We believe that this will A, make the service more effective, and B, allow more slots to be used by people who need them, which in itself, whilst it won't make a dramatic difference to the potential for fly tipping and waste, should help to some degree. And I therefore would like to urge the Cabinet to support the proposals.
Thank you, Councillor English. Mr Cornwall, it comes on to you. Do you want to add anything, or Mrs Stevens? Yes, online. Anything you want to add to that?
Nothing from me. I think Councillor English covered all the main points. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Any thoughts from members? I think Councillor English obviously covered that. Thank you, Councillor Harwood, for seconding. Yeah, okay, I can't see any comments. It all sounds very sensible, and I think the only discussion was at PAC was whether £5 was enough. So we're being like kind to people, which is good.
Should it prove not to be a sufficient incentive, we can always revisit that at some future date, should that be necessary.
Absolutely. So are we agreed on those two points? Brilliant. Thank you, Cabinet. Okay. Item 19 is the housing payment policy. Councillor Summerskill.
Thank you, Chair. This is more something to deal with a change coming from central government. From 1st of April this coming year, the government's changing the discretionary support that's provided towards housing costs as additional support where housing benefit or universal credit is in payment. So this report provides details of changes and background to the new housing payments policy. Discretionary housing payments have been provided by local authorities since 2001. The purpose of these is to help those on the lowest of incomes to top up any shortfall between the housing benefit payment and rent amount. And the borough has been required to have a policy in place which has evolved since 2001 to link in with economic downturns and national policies. From April, discretionary housing payments and the household support fund will end, and a new fund named the Crisis and Resilience Fund will commence. This is recently, the CRF has been in the news recently, and that's how the payments for people who are off the grid will be paid from the central government with the oil price rise. So it's a new announcement, and there was first confusion that the money was to be paid to county councils, but district authorities raised concerns because the duty under housing payments is ours. So the government has now agreed that districts can continue to receive a housing payments fund grant equivalent to the former discretionary housing payments, but a housing payments policy is required for the new fund, and based on the former policy that we had, it will allow the new scheme to be administered along the same lines. Revenue and Benefits officers will continue to work closely with the Welfare Officer in the Safer Stronger Communities team who administer the Housing Support Fund. Without going into all the detail and numbers, which are on page 72 and 73, just on 72 of your documents, you're asked to recommend the housing payments policy for adoption.
Thank you, Councillor Summerskill. Mr. Green, have you got anything to add? No? Happy to second from the chair. Clive, you're not getting your hand up quick enough at the moment. Any thoughts, comments from Cabinet members? It all sounds perfectly straightforward. It's good. So I heard agreed. Is that agreed? Good. Excellent. Right. Thanks. Okay, item 20. Councillor Wales, empty homes policy.
Thank you, Chair. This is an update of an existing policy, and it outlines the procedures we can take, or we plan to take, to encourage owners of properties which have been empty for a while to bring them back into the housing stock. This is not properties owned by us. There are various reasons why properties will be empty, and within the existing resource of the Housing Department, we will be speaking to landlords or owners of these properties to ascertain why they're empty and try and encourage them to bring them back into productive use. This will be mostly for the properties that have been empty between 1 and 3 years, because they're the easier ones to sort of cherry pick off the list. The really long-term ones, which from 3 years and over, just will involve too much time on the resource we've got. And the reasons for these sometimes can be sort of protracted probate, or it can be the family don't want to get rid of a home that's got a sentimental value but don't want anybody else to have it. All sorts of weird and wonderful reasons. When the PAC was happy with it, overview and scrutiny happy with the second iteration of the report we've got, once they realised that we were talking about properties that we didn't own, and we can't force these things to happen, and we can only cajole and encourage and steer them towards funds which Kent have to bring these properties back into use. So I commend the policy to the Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Mr Corner, anything to add? Obviously, we are charging the maximum uplift on council tax we can, and there is a scoring system in the policy that allows the team to pick off those that are best to try and bring back into use, which I think was discussed at Opium Scrutiny, wasn't it? Yeah. Any comments from members? Clive, are you going to get your hand up to second this or not? Oh, I'm going to have to do it for the chair, am I? You're going to make me second. I'll second this from the chair. Because are there any comments on this from Cabinet members? No. Okay. In that case, are we agreed that we adopt the empty homes policy? Excellent. Thank you. Gosh, rattling through. Item 21, Councillor Wales again, housing asset management strategy.
Thanks, Chair. So this is not a reiteration of a policy. It's a brand new policy, first document of this type in our accommodation portfolio. The council's accommodation assets are obviously highly valuable and growing in number, and a measured approach to management of the assets is essential to not only maintain the value of the assets, but also to ensure the provision of safe, warm homes for residents throughout their tenure. As you will know, we are starting to think about reopening the housing revenue account, and this report will go some way towards setting the foundations for that to actually happen. The strategy provides an oversight of the types and the location of the homes owned and managed by the council. It will inform the way in which our homes are managed from an asset perspective over the next 30 years. And that tends to be a key time for the housing revenue account to accounting periods. From this, the housing asset manager will develop delivery plans that will guide the team to ensure the ethos of the strategy is adhered to. There are various risks which are discussed, which are neglect of repairs and maintenance to homes would not only create potential health and safety risks to residents, but also push higher expenditure requirements into the future with risk of failure beyond economic repair. The benefits of having a well-managed system is that well-managed assets will smooth investment requirements whilst ensuring housing remains as accommodation which is safe, warm and dry for residents. The report was authored by Julie Shooter, who's here tonight, Housing Portfolio Manager, and if there's any questions of any great detail, I know she'd be happy and more than capable to respond to them. And I recommend this excellent report to Cabinet, and thanks to Julie for producing such a good document.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Mrs Shooter, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Just to say thank you for the presentation, Councillor Wales, and we're just really keen to start using the asset management strategy so that we can start the delivery project and planning and start delivering on it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Summerskill.
Thank you. With my engineering hat on, we continue to get problems over the years with materials, asbestos and rack and cladding. Are we clear ourselves at the moment with our estate on those particular problems that have caused expenditure in the past, and do we foresee any expenditure going forward on dealing with anything like that?
I think that's probably something Mr Green, is that would be an Julie, okay.
Yeah, so we do know where our asbestos is in the properties that we own, so it's in our portfolio, and we where it's needed to be removed, we've removed it, and in some cases it can be managed and it can remain in situ, so we're aware of it and we make contractors aware of that. We haven't got any cladding in our own housing stock that we need to manage in any way, so that isn't an issue at Maidstone in our council housing.
Thank you.
Councillor English.
Thank you very much for a very interesting and very helpful and informative report. It's going to be a useful tool in assessing like where we are with some of these things. And I don't have much more to say on our own stock, but I have to say that I would hope that the way we deal with our housing assets should be exemplary, so that example is set to some of the other people around. I'm aware that about fire risk, that a rather large planning application was recently refused by our planning department because it was assessed by the health and safety executive as being deficient in fire precautions. And it's really worrying that in this day and age, proposals that are still so flawed in terms of fire safety are coming forward. And hopefully, if we can at least set a benchmark that is what a local authority should be doing, whilst encouraging and using other tools to ensure that other people also bring forward proposals that are not putting their tenants at risk.
Councillor Wales.
Yeah, just to say, a lot of our property in the portfolio is quite new, of course, because it's property that we recently built, so they will conform to all modern standards. The two which we're waiting for, Springfield and Maidstone East, are both sitting waiting for the government health and safety department to go through and assess the plans in terms of making them as safe as they possibly can be. And also to say that there is money set aside, increased in the budget for next year, for maintaining these properties that we have, and of course that will increase, the amount of maintenance will increase because the property gets bigger, the portfolio gets bigger, so we need to make sure that it's still always habitable and safe and dry and warm and all the rest of it.
I see no one else indicating. I'm happy to second per the papers on from the chair. Are we agreed? Fantastic. So, item 22, Article 4, direction for Invicta House. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chair. This will be a matter that will be close to my heart if I had one, because I was based in this building for more than 20 years, and it did feel like at least 20 years, I can tell you. Back in December, there was a motion from an opposition group to full council calling for a potential Article 4 direction, i.e. removing permitted development rights from any planning applications for Invicta House and Maidstone, the Kent County Council office building in Sandling Road. Upshot of that motion was there was a reference to the Policy Advisory Committee, where there was actually, I think, quite a high quality debate around the issues involved and the potential ways forward. And the reference that in turn came from Policy Advisory Committee was then discussed with officers, and I think we've come up with a potential way forward which addresses a larger issue that Invicta House was a potential symptom of, rather than just zeroing in specifically on that. And that is to seek to place greater control over our destiny when it comes to planning on commercial office stock, because of some of the mounting evidence which is now out there around social outcomes and opportunities for the changing demographic in the town centre, where I think we really do need to take stock and to have more control. Therefore, I wish to move the following motion, which is informed, as I say, by the debate at full council, by the subsequent debate at Policy Advisory Committee, and subsequent discussions with officers. And that motion is that, in light of concerns around mounting evidence of negative social outcomes, officers progress work on a non-immediate Article 4 direction with the purpose of removing permitted development rights for conversion from use class E, commercial business and service, to use class C3, residential, to be applied to office buildings over 1,500 square metres located within Maidstone Town Centre. So it's now a zonal approach to an area where we know we are facing some very particular challenges and where we have a growing evidence base, and that is what is behind us seeking more control over planning decisions for that area, and we do not feel that permitted development is appropriate because of those sensitivities. I hope that makes some sense to colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Clearly we've had fairly recent knowledge, information around the level of deprivation in that particular area, which was quite a surprise to us, at the depth of that, and that has impacted upon the area quite significantly. So I'm very happy to second your proposal from the Chair.
Thank you. If I may come back, I think some of those challenges around child deprivation is an area where having appropriate social support infrastructure and so on is particularly important. So we are not making this decision lightly or in a vacuum.
Yes, thank you. And I was going to go on to say we have obviously put some money aside to do a mini Pride in Place around that area because of the problems we found. Councillor English.
I was actually raising my hand a second on this occasion. Well, no, it's perfectly all right. But I'll just say, I don't think given that it's essentially asking for further work, I don't think we need to debate it further at this point. But I think it is a reasonable way forward to try and square some of the circles that we could otherwise face. So, thank you. Thank you very much for those who worked to bring this proposal forward, and I look forward to seeing the results in due course.
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Summersgill, I think you indicated.
Yes, thank you. Not been at the PAC to hear the discussions. I'd just like some clarification on this government national policy framework applying to the smallest geographical area possible, and the fact that the original thing that was brought up was for one particular building, but we are now defining an area that's larger than that one building, of course. But is it too large an area to be, on robust evidence, the smallest geographical area possible? I'd like some general view on that. Thank you.
Mr. Edgerton, would you like to come in and on advice on that?
Thank you very much indeed. It's entirely appropriate to start off with an overall area that you have in mind. What the final outcome is likely to be is that defined buildings within that overall area will be subject to the Article 4 direction. And I think the wording of the proposed resolution there, actually allows officers to ensure that the smallest possible number of buildings, the smallest possible area is achieved within the overall town centre. So we don't actually need to designate everything within the town centre. We have set parameters within it, and it'll therefore target specific buildings only. Thank you.
And that includes the one that the original request to came about?
Indeed, it will be evidence-led, and it will be within the overall town centre boundary, yes. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
I note that this story began for many people in the local newspaper. It developed further in the same newspaper. It came to the council chamber, and in the minds of many, perhaps residents and others in the community, more widely, it might have been thought that they were looking at some kind of political football. I would like to applaud colleagues and this council of officers for taking a principled approach on this subject. I am, like colleagues, confident that we brought business, economy, residential planning and the long-term future together in our proposition this evening. and I hope that we will be able to bring that to the attention of the same media that set the story running, so that the record will be made clear as to what our motives and intentions are in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see anyone else indicating. So we've got a motion proposed by Councillor Harwood. Are we agreed? Excellent. Thank you, councillors. Item 23 is the river and nature restoration. Councillor Rodwell.
This one does my heart good. So I do have a heart. I do. So we're asking the Cabinet to approve a grant of 97,600. Just want to make to Kent Wildlife Trust to deliver a river restoration project, which I will just be outlining. Just as a little point, when it went to PAC, it was 87,600, but that is an oversight. The agreed figure, the agreed proposal that Kent Wildlife Trust put forward was for 97,600. So just as a bit of background, Kent Wildlife Trust have proposed a 2-year partnership project with Maidstone Borough Council to deliver an integrated programme that strengthens and deepens landowner engagement and accelerates river and nature restoration across Maidstone Borough. Now, the project focuses on developing new farmer clusters, facilitating local farmers already doing amazing work and land managers in the Lower Belt and the Greensand Ridge to work collaboratively at a landscape scale, delivering nature recovery, water quality, climate resilience, and projects promoting greater access to nature. This builds on Kent Wildlife Trust's extensive experience in developing and delivering the existing Upper Belt and Marden farmer clusters. This proposal aligns with Maidstone Borough Council's climate, biodiversity and nature recovery priorities, whilst linking into the wider super farmer cluster concept across the Low Weald from Ashford to Marden and Yalding. So it's a very holistic, very connected approach, seeing this as a bigger thing rather than individual. So Kent Wildlife Trust would be providing the coordination and the technical advice and partnership working to identify nature recovery opportunities at landscape scale that cannot simply be achieved through isolated actions alone. I must add at this point, there are amazing things happening on individual farms, but you know, there is a thirst with the clusters to get more farmers involved, to get more farmers into the cluster. And you know, it's getting somebody to help coordinate that and bring more people in. So also with the Nature Restoration Fund, there will be other opportunities for projects that could be implemented within the cluster. A little bit of the objectives. So we're talking about supporting and expanding farmer clusters within the Lower Belt catchment and the Greensand Ridge areas, and it's encouraging a really collaborative nature restoration projects to be developed. The engagement and advising landowners, so that's there for an advice. Rivers and riparian tree cover and wetlands restoration, already working alongside South East River Trust and their existing projects with Maidstone Borough Council to bolster landowner engagement and improve ecological conditions, water quality and natural flood management, and of course enhancing biodiversity and connectivity through the Nature Restoration Fund, and also obviously contributing towards Maidstone Borough Council's climate and biodiversity commitments. So we're talking about a dedicated Kent Wildlife Trust project officer who would be facilitating and developing new farmer clusters in the Lower Belt and the Greensand Ridge, and supporting cluster-led environmental priorities like soil health and hedgerows, riparian tree cover and ponds, pollinators and water quality. And encouraging peer-to-peer learning. So it's a real sort of collegiate way forward. So it's really exciting, and yeah, there's so much brilliant work already going on the upper belt as well, and it will be really lovely to have a much more coordinated approach with both the upper and the lower. And yeah, we spent a very wet day on the upper belt looking at what they're doing. I came home completely sodden, and yeah, can see it's very much needed. And as far as the 30,000 that we're looking to ask for flood mitigation measures, in order to deliver effective flood management, the council recognised that natural solutions need to be complemented by tailored and appropriate flood mitigation measures. And in 2019, it worked with the Environment Agency on a programme to install flood mitigation measures in properties at severe risk of flooding in Yalding, Collier Street and Hunton. And as reported to the PAC in September 2025, the Environment Agency has identified Headcorn as another area with a critical mass of homes that are at risk of flooding. And the Environment Agency has now signed a contract with consultants for phase 1 of the project. And a total of 34 properties are registered for the initial surveys, comprising 20 in Headcorn and 14 in Ulcombe. So following completion of the surveys, the Environment Agency would let a contract for property flood resilience installations, subject to funding being secured. And Kent County Council, as the lead local flood authority, has agreed to provide partnership funding that will fully cover surveys and installations measures for 14 properties in Ulcombe. And it will also contribute towards the works for 20 high-risk properties in Headcorn affected by fluvial flooding and surface water runoff. So the Cabinet indicated its support in principle for the Environment Agency Property Flood Resilience Scheme at its meeting on the 17th of September 2025, at which point the Environment Agency had requested 63,000 contribution in order to meet the budget gap on the project. The project now faces a reduced shortfall of 30,000 out of a total project cost of £1 million. So the Cabinet is asked to confirm its commitment to meet this shortfall, if at all possible. And once we've confirmed this, it will enable the Environment Agency to proceed with the scheme as planned and deliver meaningful flood protection for the communities in Headcorn and Ulcombe. And that's the background.
Thank
Please
you,
agree.
Councillor Boswell. Before I come, I've lots of hands going up. Mr Green, is there anything you want to add? So you're proposing, all per the papers, but 97, not 87. Yeah. Okay. Councillor English, you indicated first.
I don't have any problem with the report as presented now that the mass has been corrected. But I would say that going forward, mitigation is one thing, and it's necessary in certain cases, but the priority going forward must be to try and ensure that properties don't get into the situation where mitigation is required. So, in as far as can be avoided. So, going forward with larger natural flood resilience measures, which also improve biodiversity, because the two things are intimately linked. Just ask your average beaver. That is got to be the way forward. So I think we should see this as an mostly encouraging first step. First toe dipped in the water, if you like. But we as a council in our remaining time, and hopefully our successor authority will need to be much more ambitious, because we do face significant challenges. But it is good to see a start being made in delivering both the aspirations of this Cabinet and some of the aspirations of the previous all-party scrutiny review into the water cycles. So in that sense, I'm quite pleased to see it. As I said, though, the priority does need to be, we obviously do need to mitigate in some cases, but to actually avoid getting in the situation where the mitigation is required, which is something like closing the stable door.
Thank you. Or building the dam. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chair. This is genuinely groundbreaking innovation. work with a local authority working with a wildlife charity in this way on a local project with landowners and land managers, and a kind of grassroots project. And I hope that it really proves itself and can be rolled out to other watercourses. I mean, there are the River Medway, the Len, the Tees, they've all got some real challenges, and the land around them. And we cannot hide from the fact that we're in the midst of a nature catastrophe. The decline in biodiversity in our lifetimes has been absolutely catastrophic, and we need to turn it around. And I think it's really interesting that part of the funding for this project is some match funding for a species recovery initiative around the turtle dove project. And what turtle doves need is they need a nice area of scrub, and they need some ponds. And scrub and ponds helps prevent flooding. So this should be a win-win for communities on the Low Weald and the Greensand Ridge and for our wildlife. And also I think we need to consider this in the round as well, in that it's part of a wider programme, because we also have a nature restoration fund. So if you like, the revenue funding that is going in to pay for the officer, that officer will be able to bid against our nature recovery fund for specific projects and match funding and so on. So hopefully we will lever in a lot more investment in nature in our borough through this project. And just finally, I did want to thank Mark Green for his work on this, because financially, you know, working out how when it comes to a funding project, and particularly a partnership project, it is not straightforward. And Mark has managed to get all of the sums done very efficiently and very quickly to get this into the budget for the coming year. And I do hope that once we hopefully make this agreement, we can hit the ground running, because the sooner this officer is doing their stuff on the Low Weald and the Greensand Ridge, the better for all involved.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Yes, biodiversity emergence. 70% of all animals have been wiped out since 1970, roughly, isn't it? And 70% of flying insects have gone in this country in the last 5 years, which is jaw-dropping. I've got Councillor Summerskill, Thompson, English, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Rodwell. Summerskill.
Thank you. Well, this is great news, carrying on from things we've been trying to get going with the South East Rivers Trust, but not successfully as much in the Headcorn area. Just want to note the Kent Wildlife Trust mentioning the Marden cluster. I mean, it's effectively a lower belt cluster already, because there's farmers in small holdings in Collier Street Parish, Hunton Parish, Linton Parish, and a bit of land in Staplehurst, all with farmers contributing to that cluster. So it's not just Marden. So it's right a part of my ward. And the Greensand Ridge cluster includes not just the belt, but Lewes Stream catchment and some of the Len. What we need, and we should perhaps call out more, is something in the middle belt area, which is Staplehurst and Headcorn, where we don't seem to have as much involvement. Perhaps it's larger farms or whatever, but that's, I would hope, to encourage everything to be joined up, so that the upper belt cluster and the lower belt cluster have a third partner in the middle.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Leader. I hope others are listening, and let's not be shy about telling them. My colleague mentioned other authorities who need to be paying attention to us in the future. Holding the economic portfolio, as I do, we need to spell out this is what we're talking about here isn't a nice to have or a piece of icing on an otherwise serious piece of local government cake. It may be that hurricanes hardly ever happen in Headcorn, or that there won't be wildfires in Wentswood in Boxley, or that there won't be downpours in Downswood on the scale of European continental neighbours that we see in our newspaper, because the topography and the continental shelf geography isn't the same. But it rains. Boy, does it rain. And it floods. And it may come slowly, it may come gradually, but it comes incessantly. And this is the threat to the economic development that our opponents and colleagues talk about. And they need to get with the programme, that we're on the same page, and that our collective survival relies in taking these developments seriously. We're presenting a positive and pragmatic and indeed environmentally sensible approach, and it's the right thing to do for the country.
Thank you. Councillor English, you wanted to come back?
No, I didn't, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Rodwell.
Yeah, actually, just going on from what you said, Councillor Thompson, with the situation of the way that, you know, we can deny or minimise that there is a climate change, or whether there is biodiversity collapse, and there's nothing more powerful than walking the land with farmers, and farmers telling me directly they are noticing the changes, they are seeing problems, they are seeing things. And these are farmers that have farmed these areas for generations. And when it comes from farmers that something needs to happen, there is no more powerful message than that when you're actually talking to people face to face. And, you know, going to one of the Greensand Ridge cluster meetings, they put up this amazing map that shows all the different farms in the area of Maidstone, everything. We were talking about things needing to be joined up, and all the existing farms that are already in the clusters, but there are so many gaps, and there is a thirst for bringing more people on board. So that map is absolutely full of all the different farms, and the clusters are bigger and bigger, because with the more farmers and farms engaged, the more opportunities for funding and future funding. And when we're talking about, you know, our authority ending whenever, and we don't know what the future looks like, this is sustainable, because this partnership working, getting somebody on board, encouraging and helping farmers collaborate and work together, especially farmers that, you know, they want this. It's wonderful that long after whatever happens with us, that this is already in place, and it's something that will be going forward, because, you know, collaboration, communication and partnership working is so important, regardless of who's in authority at the time. So I just think it's wonderful, and I hope to see that map in a couple of years absolutely full of all the different farms that are part of these clusters.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'm happy to second from the chair. I can't see anyone else indicating, so are we agreed? Agreed. Fantastic. Item 24, Councillor Wells. Homes England audit results, Corbyn's phase 3.
Some more good news from the Housing Department. This item is for noting only and for compliance purposes, and relates to the results of a recent audit undertaken by Homes England on Corbyn's Place Phase 3. As you all know, Homes England are our main strategic partner on home building, supplying an awful lot of the finance. The audit was a requirement of the Capital Funding Guide, which is undertaken on the schemes that have been in receipt of Homes England grant funding to aid delivery. The audit considers whether the recipients have met the funding conditions and contractual requirements. And the results of the audit, as you've all been waiting for, have confirmed that Maidstone Borough Council has met all of the associated requirements, and as one would expect, given the team who have been in charge of running it, and I would like to thank them in particular, from William Cornwall and Phil Morris and their team, for giving us a good clean slate, which bodes well for the future in terms of not just any other inspections, but also in achieving more funding. In this report to Cabinet.
No comments from the officers added to that. Councillor English. Seconded by Councillor English. Well done. Okay, I can't see anyone else indicating. This is for noting, so are we agreed to note it? Lovely. Final item is the Foundation Strategic Authority Expression of Interest, to be introduced by me. As members will recall, we were written to each of the leaders across Kent were written to asking whether we'd like to submit an expression of interest to form a foundation strategic authority across Kent. We in previous discussions on devolution and local government reorganisation have really pushed the idea that we will do local government reorganisation because devolution will bring Kent power and money, and so this is part or a step towards that. As you know, the full mayoral authority isn't yet on offer to us. This is a sort of lesser version. It still covers the 7 areas of competency that strategic authority will do, but with less powers within, with fewer powers within each of those 7 areas. There's no mayor to lead it. It would be an authority made up of constituent authorities, i.e. the unitaries once they're formed, we think, and representation on a board in very much the model that perhaps Manchester has without the mayor. So they have a board made up of each of the, I think it's 10 unitary authorities in Greater Manchester. A letter has been prepared and is ready to go on the back of this, which basically simply says yes, we'd like to progress. We also know that Kent County Council is not going to be a signatory to that letter on the basis that it doesn't want to signal that its own 1A option, a single unitary, isn't viable. If we have a single unitary, we can't have an FSA because you need multiple unitaries to form a strategic authority. So Kent County Council finds itself in a quandary that it can't support money coming down from from national government to local, which feels a bit strange when you read their manifestos. But hey, they've furrowed that dug that hole, and that's where they are. So I'm asking Cabinet if it will support this council putting that expression of interest in, and per the papers. I did see Councillor Thompson first, and then Councillor English.
Thank you, Leader. We come to the proposal for a foundation strategic authority in what's been a frustrating journey. Let's be candid, the national leadership of devolution has not been what it should have been. Elections off, then on again. Priorities shifted, promises implied, then withdrawn. Kent and Medway made a collective case for inclusion in the devolution priority programme, only to be fobbed off with banal comments about the size of the 2 authorities. Then, while others were pushed with even ruder haste, we were asked to undertake the most complex local government reorganisation in the country, with limited support, constrained capacity, and under continuing service pressures, with real consequences for so many of Kent's vulnerable residents here in Maidstone and across the county. But we did not stand still while things were eventually done to us, and we frankly owe a debt to you, Councillor Jeffrey, and to our Chief Executive, and those that you've led us in partnership with, and I want to thank you in this forum very sincerely for what you've done. You and we have organised, we've collaborated, and thus far we've delivered. As the joint letter to Ministers makes clear, Kent and Medway are the only area to have undertaken a fully integrated cross-tier LGR process with shared evidence, shared financial modelling, shared governance, and as best as we can manage at this point, a shared narrative about our future. We did that not because government told us how, they didn't help at all, but because we understand our place and our economy and our communities. So now that the government invites us to envisage a foundation strategic authority, let's be equally clear, we're not starting from scratch. We've been doing the work that a strategic authority is meant to do. We have led through the Kent and Medway Economic Partnership. We're building the evidence base of our local growth plan. We've identified precisely the sectors from the government's IS8 strategy where Kent excels, and indeed reshaped that narrative in agri-food, digital, energy and logistics. The Garden of England is still producing and delivering 40% of the country's fruit and vegetables. We've shaped the beginnings of a spatial development strategy that reflects real places, not abstract targets for housing or whatever else. We can see how our future communities should be built in this region, at least in outline. This is what real devolution looks like. Not a model imposed from above, but empowered leadership grown here from within. So the FSA model does offer something important. It gives us a defined set of competencies for transport, skills, housing, economic development, environment, community health. These are the very levers that we argue should sit at the Kent level, with a local transport plan, environmentally sound spatial planning, lifelong skills development, a sustainable energy system and proper integration of services that our residents want to trust us to deliver. We must be honest about its limits. At the foundation level, the powers are partial. The funding's uncertain. Might this be yet another layer without strength to deliver transformation after we've just binned the existing layer cake? So we do support the submission of the expression of interest. We do support the principle of devolution, but we don't want a passive role in an off-the-shelf system from MHCLG. We've earned the right to co-create this. We expect government to recognise that Kent is not an administrative blank piece of paper. This 2 million people, with its national responsibilities from Dover and its mixed rail network, from food security to logistics resilience, is vitally important. Either devolution delivers operations at the strategic scale, or it will be devolution in name only, D-I-N-O. And that way lies extinction, as I know Councillor Summerskill will thank me for pointing out. We require powers and funding that deliver. We don't want an undemocratic and unrepresentative strategic authority. We want one that gives integrated, affordable, decarbonised transport, one that plans energy and heat networks as public services, that gives us an economy rooted in place, skills, lifelong learning, and develops existing sectors where we're genuinely strong. For homes and infrastructure that strengthen existing communities, not speculative extractive development dressed up as sustainable communities. We want a strategic authority that reflects and develops Kent's character, not a pro forma from Whitehall. We expect to be treated as not as consultees, but as partners. And you've set us well on that train, Councillor Jeffrey. If this is to succeed, it will not be because it's designed in Westminster. It will be because it's built here, by us, by the people of Kent.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor English.
I mean, I can understand Councillor Thompson's innate scepticism, to be honest, because we have in this country one of the most centralised governmental and administrative systems in the world, not just in the democratic world, but in the world, full stop, covering all sorts of governments of different stripes and colours, which is hard to be more centralised than the UK is. There have been some sort of steps away from this to some degree with the devolved administrations, but England remains massively centralised. If the promises, sort of not very fleshed out, but the promises of devolution are realised, there is an opportunity to change that and to actually involve vast sections of the public that are currently excluded from the levers of power to walk through the door and to grasp some of those levers. If that promise is to be met, we've no idea at this stage whether it will be. One thing's for sure, if we turn our backs and walk away and don't express an interest, that door will very, very rapidly not be there, let alone open. So expressing an interest is the very minimum least we can do. If that interest leads to anything, then we need to be, as Councillor Thompson has said, as engaged as possible, as open-minded as possible, to deliver as much as possible for the people of Kent, regardless of what their political aspirations might be, but for the public as a whole. Because these opportunities will not come often. If we don't seize this one, I don't think it will come again in my lifetime. And some decades ago, the then Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Prescott, failed to deliver a meaningful devolution package to Durham. He delivered a meaningless talking shop, and the people of Durham decided they didn't want to pay money for people to deliver a meaningless talking shop, and voted it down. But instead of coming forward with more meaningful proposals that might have got public support, the whole thing got knocked on its head for some decades. What we don't want a repeat of that process. If this does not lead anywhere, the cause of devolution and empowering the people of this country, and not just unelected bureaucrats in Whitehall, will be put back for decades. So we really do need to make this opportunity work.
Thank you, Councillor. Mrs. Broom, did you want to add something?
Yes, if I might just add one or two things. So firstly, with respect to the recommendations, I think there's been a lot of focus on the expression of interest opportunity for a foundation authority. I'd just draw your attention to the recommendation 3, which is the more strategic decision, essentially inviting you to consider a strategic authority, which could be a different rung on the ladder of the options available. Foundation strategic authorities are the most basic rung in that ladder. So that's what I originally wanted to say, but I would just like to say a couple of things in response to Councillor Thompson's contributions, and maybe just give you something of a reality check. So I understand the principles that you were putting forward, but don't be any doubt about what it says in the white paper that came out in December 24 and what is in the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill that's currently going through Parliament. Both of them seek to simplify and have a structured universal system for English devolution, rather than what we've seen in the past, which is a mosaic of deals crafted for individual places. So I just think it's important to know that, because it is different from what has gone before, and perhaps isn't exactly what you might have envisaged about growing locally a model for Kent. I just don't want you to be in the position where you think that that is what is going to be on the table. And then just to add something that has occurred in the last couple of days, and which may influence your appetite, I'm going to assume it's going to influence it positively given the sentiments that you've already expressed. And that is some of the comments that have been made by the Chancellor concerning the potential, the idea that income tax could also, at least in part, come under the control. I don't mean necessarily the setting of tax levels, but the product of the collection for mayoral strategic authorities. So this is another potential opportunity for more local control over resources. As that had happened since the report was published, I thought I would mention it so that you can take it into account in your decision making. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, did you want to come back?
Thank you very much. Alison, for that, which I think underlines that we do not go with an empty begging bowl simply to receive whatever it is we're lucky enough to receive. We might get to choose which flavour of chocolate we find in the bag.
Yeah, precisely. There's a framework we have to work within it, but there are choices we have within that framework. And just to say that, to reiterate Mrs. Broom's point, there are layers of strategic authority, foundation, mayoral, extended mayoral or enhanced mayoral, I can't remember, it's an E in front of it. Sounds like an e-bike. Right, okay, I can't see anyone else indicating. We haven't got a seconder. Clive, please, second it, please. Seconded by Councillor English. Okay, are we agreed? Thank you. And with that, I think we can close the meeting. I declare it closed. Thanks, everybody.